Call this meeting of Township High School District 211 Board of Education to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Mrs. Cavill, here. Mr. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Here.
Mr. McGowan. Mr. Rosenblum.
Here.
Mrs. Klinkwitz.
Here. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America,
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comments. There is no one for public comment. That leads us to unfinished business. And the unfinished business, the recommended action is that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to retain Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies to provide state government relations advice and lobbying services in relation to the mega project pilot legislation related TIF reform and public school finance impacts.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Small?
Just as a few summary comments from last week and transitioning us into this week. There are 3 public school districts involved in the land that is formerly housed by the Arlington Park International Racecourse and now owned by the Chicago Bears. The complete approximately 320-acre site is contained all within the District 15 elementary school taxing district, with the high school districts of District 211 and 214 splitting the property, with most of the land being in the 214 taxing district. At this time, there are no building plans approved by the Village of Arlington Heights, but the mixed-use plan publicly presented by the Bears organization includes the stadium, office, retail, and residential buildings. Currently, the unapproved building plans have the stadium entirely within the District 211 taxing district, with no residential buildings in that area. It is unknown exactly how many new students may be a part of the residential areas, and those are currently proposed but not approved by the Village of Arlington Heights in the districts of 15 and 214. Legislation known as the Mega Project Assessment Freeze and Payment Law, typically referred to as the Mega Project, was recently introduced into the Illinois General Assembly as Senate Bill 1350 and now recently House Bill 3565. The legislation would amend primarily the property tax code to create a development incentive for any seeking company for Mega Project status, but immediately benefiting the redevelopment of the Arlington Park racetrack with the proposed Bears football stadium and mixed-use development area. The new mega project legislation freezes the assessment value for property for up to 40 years. Any improvements to the property or future new development on the property for up to 40 years would not generate any new taxes received by the district. The first year could be a frozen valuation of the property as vacant land. This freeze on the property taxes for up to 40 years allows for tax certainty for the company during the development, and in return, the company pays what is called a special payment, in addition to the frozen valuation of the property taxes. The special payment is then divided among the taxing bodies at the tax rate of the first year of the mega project. The legislation is currently written so that these special payment details are an individual agreement solely between the company and the local municipality. Though it is anticipated that the current language of the bill will change over time, the attachment to the agenda details a comparison of the current language of the bill compared to a TIF. It is unknown whether the Bears organization plans on proposing the entire property as a mega project or having some portions as part of a TIF. New TIF legislation, Senate Bill 1391, has been sponsored by Senator Gillespie, along with the mega project legislation that she is sponsoring. The current recommendation tonight is for hiring a joint lobbyist to represent the 3 school districts to ensure the interest of the school districts is written into the current legislation, if the legislation is being considered for approval in the future. Any TIF or mega project legislation involves freezing or controlling the amount of taxes that a public school district can collect, even as the value of the property increases. These legislative decisions then have an effect on school districts for decades in the future. Economic development is a vital component of our villages, and the school districts recognize and support that development. The school districts are asking that when it comes to freezing tax payments and assessment evaluations, the school districts are at the table in the decision-making, as public schools and our taxpayers are directly affected by these decisions. The mega project legislation designates that tax and special payment decisions to be made by the Village of Arlington Heights and the Bears organization. Therefore, the 3 school district taxing bodies, which include all the communities in 211, are not protected where property tax decisions are made that can be in place for up to 40 years. At the February 16th Board of Education meeting, the will of the board was that any action regarding a lobbyist contain the name of the recommended firm, and preferably that District 211 be able to join Districts 15 and 214 in collaborating through one lobbyist if possible. On Friday, February 17, Districts 15 and 214 entered into an engagement agreement with Cozen O'Connell Public Strategies, and it was agreed, pending District 211 board action today, that District 211 could join in the engagement agreement made between District 15 and 214 with Cozen O'Connell Public Strategies, via an addendum naming 211 as an additional third district to the agreement. As stated in the attachment to the agenda, the scope of representation by Cozen O'Connell Public Strategies will include state government relations and advice and lobbying services in connection with state legislation that affects the school districts. This is reflected specifically in the recommended action tonight. Cozen O'Connell Public Strategies will work to ensure that all 3 districts' interests and funding are protected in connection with state legislation concerning mega project developments, TIF district reforms, and the related impact on public financing. The lobbying services will include, but not limited to, identifying key stakeholders, including state and local officials and staff, development and implement of a government affairs strategy, advocacy at the Illinois General Assembly and the Governor's Office, communicate regularly as directed by all districts, and work cooperatively with all districts' Board of Education, staff, and allies. The engagement of Cozen O'Connor is for 1 year at a fee of $9,000 per month or $3,000 per district per month, with the option to cancel at any time with 30 days written notice. It is estimated that the engagement will last approximately 4 to 5 months. It is a powerful voice when the 2 largest high school districts in the state and their common elementary school district are all asking for the same support and changes in legislation that is currently being considered in direct connection to the Bears Development Project. My thanks to Interim Superintendent Ken Art and Superintendent Lori Heinz for their open lines of communications as the 3 districts are navigating this situation.
Dr. Small, thank you for the summary. Is there any other discussion, question? Okay.
Well, nobody else wants to say anything? Yeah, I've done as much research as I can with the information we have, which is somewhat limited, basically from what the newspaper is reporting. First of all, I would hope that everyone on this Board of Education is in favor of economic development. I don't know if that is the case. I would hope so. The newspaper reported that the stadium is not going to, the building of the stadium, according to the Bears, is not, they are not going to ask for any taxpayer support. That was new element to me, and that's basically the area that District 211 has purview. I'd like to invite everybody's attention to page 4, the next to last paragraph. That, I think, it is the meat, the crux of what's going on. And I got to tell you, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, there are a lot of known unknowns and there are a lot of unknown unknowns, which makes it, which makes it not clear that there is a clear-cut path that this firm is going to be able to follow or even communicate to us, because I think that things are going to escalate and move very, very rapidly. The first item on the agenda, as I could read the calendar, is Springfield to act on those 2 bills, which may or may not pass. We don't know what the process or what this consulting firm is going to do in the event that that happens. We don't know what Plan A is, or Plan B, or even Plan C. For example, what if Pilot is voted down? The Chicago Democrats do not want the Bears to move, and that's where the mass is of the votes, and so that is likely. Which legislators are the lobbying firm going to lobby? I don't know what that answer is. These are questions. What about other entities that will be involved in this should the project come to fruition? Besides the Bears, Metro, how are they going to be affected? Are they going to be involved in the negotiations, in the planning? There could be some infrastructure changes and some scheduling that Metro would have to be involved in. What about IDOT? I'm not an engineer, but I can take a look at the aerial view, the aerial photos of the plot and the land, and I don't think there's enough road there to handle the traffic right now. I think it would be congested and would have to be fixed. If you would get an IDOT for changing the infrastructure of 53, you're talking about the feds. Is this firm going to interact with the feds and lobby them? So that is yet to unfold. I also would like to. Do we have a copy of the proposed contract?
The information that's in the agenda, I believe it's the paragraphs that you reference, actually have the statement of services that are provided and the cost is there word for word in the 2 paragraphs in the attachment to the agenda.
Well, I think there has to be more detail. I mean,
That is the detail.
that's it. Two sentences. We don't know. We don't know.
It's not 2 sentences, it's 2 paragraphs.
Okay.
It's the scope of representation and the fee and terms of engagement are listed word for word in there, just as approved by the other 2 districts.
Does that include lobbying the federal government?
Lobbying the federal government is not in here.
Oh, okay, I think that's what I'm not done yet. So I am in favor of this. I would also like to understand what the protocol is going to be for the Board of Education to be involved in any lobbying. What is the communication flow proposed and understood by the administration for the lobbying firm to communicate directly with the Board of Education?
They will give us weekly updates and they will present to the board if asked.
They will present if asked.
Mhm.
Okay. Does it have to be a consensus, or can one board member request?
I would guess it would be consensus.
It has to be consensus.
I want that to be clear.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just
Mr. Dombrowski?
along the lines of what Mr. Kramer was saying, if the lobbyist is not performing satisfactorily for any district, what is it a 12-year contract that we would pay the full 12 months and then hire a different lobbyist, or is there an exit clause for one district?
No, as,
You know-
as it's written, as I said, the engagement is a fee. It's a year engagement for $9,000 per month or $3,000 per district per month, with the option to cancel at any time with 30 days written notice.
And that's individually, not the three. It doesn't require 15 and 214 for us to cancel, right? Okay,
Because
thank
they've
you.
already engaged.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
If when District 211 doesn't have as much skin in the game as the other district, why are we paying the same?
The skin in the game, as you reference, is yet to be determined because we can't presume that the stadium is only in our area, and we cannot presume that the stadium is not a part of the mega project or the TIF legislation. What we have received is what the Bears put out publicly in their first round of discussions.
Which said we plan subject to change. That's what the.
Well, they're not approved.
Okay.
Everything is subject to change.
Well, even what's in concrete is subject to change, depending on lobbying and the legislature. I understand.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I don't have, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Curtis
please.
here.
Yes.
I don't necessarily have a question, but more of a comment. And first of all, I want to, I appreciate the candid comments that Mr. Kramer had and the homework he did going into this. And I definitely agree with a lot of the items that he brought up regarding how fast moving this is and not knowing what the unknowns will be. And because of that, to his point, I know we haven't voted yet, but I'm definitely in favor of having someone represent us. And I love the fact that, Pete had you point out the fact that there's that 30-day written notice. If at any time we do decide that we're just not happy with the service, the production, the speed or lack thereof, and we could back out individually as a district. So I definitely want to thank everyone for not necessarily coming in and wasting time tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? And just as a reminder, if you have questions, please, and I know sometimes we think of them as we're sitting here, but if you have questions, if you can get them ahead of time, that's helpful for the administration.
I would ask the superintendent of the board have set a date for when the lobbying firm, if approved, can come in and brief us on what they're going to do. I don't know if it has to be in closed session or not, because it is a contract.
There would need to be consensus on that. Would you be, all right, let me rephrase.
Madam
this.
President, part of the contract, when it describes the process, in terms of identifying the key stakeholders that Mr. Kramer was referring to, who was going to be spoken to, that is part of the service. So I'm all in favor of a presentation, certainly, but after a point when they actually have information that's useful to present.
That's what I was getting at. So maybe we can leave it with Dr. Small, so when there's more information, it could be presented to us. She can get something out to us in her weekly update to us, and then we can go from there.
I understand that the information is going to evolve. So any information you provide us once a week or whatever would be very helpful.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. If not, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. McGowan? Oh, excuse me. Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mrs. Cavill? Aye. Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Bradley?
Curtis? Mr. Bradley?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yay or nay?
Roll call.
It's a roll call.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye. Did you get Mr. Rosenblum? Okay. All right, the motion passes. All right, there's no other business to come before the board. Then the board president adjourns this meeting at 5:18 p.m.